Welcome to the Columbus Metro Club, and welcome to the Forum, the weekly program of the Columbus Metro Club, where we cultivate conversations and connections that truly drive our Columbus region forward. The Forum brings together visionary leaders, CEOs, members of Congress, college presidents, UN ambassadors, artists, and changemakers to examine issues that truly matter, exchange diverse perspectives, and most importantly, forge connections that create a better region. I'm Sophia Pfiffner. I'm the president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. And for those of you joining from our live stream, we're coming to you from the Ellis, an Italian village in the heart of Columbus. Thank you so much to today's forum sponsors, Communities and Schools of Ohio, and the Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland. Let's all give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for your support. And every week, we are so thankful to our presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. We're so grateful to the Ellis for hosting us, because every single CMC event takes a village. So thank you, everyone, and thank you all for supporting today's conversation. All right, now to the meat of today's conversation. High-tech careers do mean high stakes in education, and that's why it's the title of today's forum. With data centers and battery plants popping up and Intel's new chip factories forging ahead, there's no doubt that Central Ohio's future competitiveness really depends on a skilled workforce ready to work in high-tech industries. So what's needed to ensure Ohio's students of today can meet the needs of tomorrow's, especially when it comes to STEM and AI-heavy fields? Today, we explore the education reform strategies many state business leaders are backing, and we are honored to welcome today's panels. Geena Gamble, Senior Talent Acquisition Specialist with Worthington Enterprises. Lisa Gray, President of Ohio Excels. And Pat Tiberi, President and CEO of the Ohio Business Roundtable. And every conversation wouldn't be possible without our host and returning to CMC once again, Axios reporter Alissa Widman Neese. Alissa, welcome back to the CMC, and the podium is all yours.
Well, to set the stage, I think I'm going to ask a question that we use to frame every Axios story, which is, why does this matter? Why is this conversation so urgent right now? And I'm going to open it up to whoever wants to take it.
Well, so we're all going to argue about who should go first. I think the reason that it matters is that we have a growing economy in Central Ohio. We're really blessed with many of the companies coming here that we heard about earlier. We've got to make sure that everybody in the Columbus region shares in the prosperity of this region. And right now, we have too many students, too many families that are not able to share in that prosperity. And when we think about what it takes to get these jobs and keep these jobs and, you know, all of the other jobs and careers that are in the area, we've got to make sure that kids have the knowledge and skills to succeed. And sadly, I don't think we're doing that well enough right now. And so I think we have a moral and an economic imperative to really bend that curve.
And coming from a manufacturing standpoint on this, there's a huge skills gap that we're seeing right now. I'm really on the front lines in recruiting and talent acquisition, and it's challenging out there to find students, employees, and folks that want to go into these high-tech fields. And it's because there's a lack of awareness out there, and there's a lack of awareness on how these students can find these pathways and what their future can look like in these pathways. So I think it's an important conversation, and we need to get our employers involved.
So to put a bow on it, because those are really well thought out answers, Ohio, quite frankly, is a state that is not growing. And if you look at a map of Ohio, most of the state is shrinking. What has really benefited Ohio, not only Central Ohio, but Central Ohio has benefited in growth to the rest of the state. And we are the economic engine for the state. Again, not the only economic engine, but if you look at the growth corridors, most of it is in Central Ohio, some in Southwestern Ohio, some in Miami Valley. And so 2/3 of the state is shrinking. Central Ohio is growing everywhere. The job base is economically diverse, which is great for opportunity. And to Lisa's point, as a kid who has seen that growth firsthand and that opportunity firsthand, having been born and raised in Columbus, that opportunity is being lost by people who live really close to here. They're not able to take advantage of that opportunity. That's the missing link. We have folks coming from all over the state, leaving their communities to take advantage of the incredible economic opportunity in Central Ohio, but yet there are people who live within walking distance of this facility who are not. That's tragic, but that's an opportunity.
Yeah, and Pat and Geena, I'm wondering from where you sit in business and in hiring, what you see is one of the biggest mismatches right now between what students are learning and what employers actually need.
There, I just made the mistake. The microphone.
It's all right.
I can't wait to hear Geena's answer because she's on the front lines of that question. But from a macro standpoint, what is frustrating to me as somebody who's been a policymaker, both at the state and federal level, and now gets to work with CEOs across the economic spectrum from all over the state, is why is there still a mismatch? We've been talking about this mismatch for decades, and the number of programs that are funded to deal with the mismatch that still haven't been able to, quite frankly, fix this mismatch, not only in Central Ohio, but statewide and, quite frankly, nationally. And so it is one of the most, I can give you examples of where things are working great, but why can't we scale those programs? That's the most frustrating thing that I cannot put my finger on. It's almost like there are turf wars within organizations, within regions, within communities of, well, I'm doing it right, so I'm just going to do it my way, rather than looking at what, I'm going to just pick out an employer, what Honda does around a plant, which is historical. I've had so many anecdotes over my lifetime of what Honda has done, not just in Central Ohio, but in the Miami Valley. It's an amazing system. Why can't we scale those types of systems? Or what Worthington has been doing with colleges in different parts of the state around plants that you guys have in the partnerships, like the Miami One partnership that Worthington Industries had. I think it's at Steel now. But again, it's that mismatch. I don't have an answer for it. It's frustrating, but you nailed it. You nailed the question.
And to your point, I think it's the alignment. That's really what we're missing and what I'm seeing out there from employers and school districts and workforce development in the area. We are lacking that alignment and coming together. That's what's going to really help us there. Advisory boards and work-based learning and ISPs out there are going to help bridge that gap. We need to start coming together as employers and as education systems to better outline what careers are out there and what opportunities that these students have. at Worthington Enterprises, we have an individual on most of all of the advisory boards at local school districts because we want to be in the room where decisions are being made. We want to know what projects they're going to be working on, what the curriculum looks like, and also what equipment they're even going to be purchasing. So we have a better understanding of what these students are learning out there and how it's going to align. So we need to make sure that these employers are in the conversations with school districts so we're prepping our students for their future careers.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, which is when we talk about education reform, what the best paths are to make that happen. Like whether it's something where you're coming at it from like a top-down state policy level, whether it's more like on the ground partnerships with schools, or if it's something else I'm not thinking of to make this become a reality.
So I think we need all of those things. For a long time, I think, a high school diploma was enough for somebody to get a job, have a career, to earn a family-sustaining wage. The fact of the matter is a traditional high school diploma does not do that anymore for most people. There are one-offs, and, we can, talk about the kid who dropped out in 9th grade and now makes $500,000 on TikTok, but that, frankly, is not a strategy we should be pursuing for all of our students. So I think we have to have the right state policy in place. We have to have the right investments in place. But we also have to be honest that, K-12, and I will say this before I say, I do not think of children as widgets. I have 4 of my own children, but I will tell you that my expectation about their education was to prepare them to be in this world, but maybe more importantly, to prepare them ultimately to get a job, to have a career, to be self-sufficient, and many of us who are parents, to get them out of our basements. And so, we need to be doing things at the local level. Teachers need to better understand what the world of work looks like and how it's changing and the knowledge and skills that kids need to have. We've got to get kids out who don't have the opportunity that many of our kids have, talking about these things at the dinner table about what you can be and, seeing these opportunities. So how do we get kids out of their classrooms to see the businesses and the companies that you work with? How do we push into classrooms? Because we're never going to get every kid an internship or a mentorship, but we can push into classrooms and do work-based learning opportunities that are real-world based. Get more kids understanding these things. And then, ultimately, what are the expectations as a state that we have for our students? We have to have high expectations. We know what it takes to get a job and keep a job. And shame on us if we don't have those expectations for every child in the state that we have for our own kids. And when you look at the data, and I'm going to give a plug for the reality check document that is on your tables, the data shows that we're not getting this done for all of the kids that need it. The numbers don't lie. And so all of the things that you're talking about matter, and they have to be happening. Just doing one of those things is not going to solve the problem, and it's not going to get to the scale issue that Pat was talking about.
And I'm also wondering, has there been any pushback to this idea, or is it just a matter of funding for the ideas? What are some of the challenges that you face in making this happen too?
Thanks, Doug. I keep wanting to eat the microphone. So there's always pushback. It's not only in this area. As I get older, I find that the pushback is almost like a comfort level that you have when you're doing things a certain way. And I can say this now because when I first came here, I think the only person that was a friendly face was Carol Looper, and she's still a friendly face. I had a different hat on then, but one of the things that this is such a complicated question, so it's a complicated answer. One of the things that it's really easy to point to in this space is there's a lack of money. I don't think so. Another pushback point is, well, geez, you know, the kid comes from a poor household. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't think so. I was on the free and reduced lunch. I was the first in my family to graduate from high school, from Northland High School. 15 years ago, I go back to Northland High School as a congressman. A former teacher who was retiring wanted me to come meet some students and talk about my job. One of the things that my former teacher said to me, great guy, liberal Democrat, so I'll just put that out there, is Pat. Can still be a great guy. Yes, no, I just want to make that point. Said to me, I want you to come away from this visit today because there are kids that you're going to meet that live in really tough neighborhoods who don't have two parents in their lives, have everything stacked against them, and not only are they going to college, they're going to go to the best colleges in America on scholarship. I met a kid who was going to Harvard. I met a kid who was going to Columbia on the free and reduced lunch program, and it reminded me, because sometimes you get in these jobs and you're like, well, it's all about where you live. And it is about where you live, by the way. I'm not saying it's not, but sometimes we have, I'm going to borrow this phrase, soft bigotry of low expectations, meaning, oh, you know, you come from this background, so you can't succeed. And then we, as policymakers, then say to those kids, well, we're going to give you a break because of where you come from, because you can't succeed. And that is doing that kid a disservice. And policymakers, Republicans and Democrats, continue to repeat that process. Whereas I meet a kid in Butler County who comes to me to sell me about this program that he was inspired by, because he was going to graduate from high school and then work in retail, because he didn't want to do anything else. And today, he's graduating from Miami, but more importantly, he had a counselor who said, hey, you know what? We have programs. I don't want to go to college. No, you can go online to Miami, but you can get a job right away, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in manufacturing. Happened to be Worthington Industries at the time. And this kid said to me, my life was changed because of that counselor telling me, you should look at Worthington Industries. He's had 3 promotions. He could spend the rest of his life there, to Lisa's point earlier, in a successful career, self-sustaining, and being happy. And if it wasn't for that counselor, again, this is what's, again, that alignment that Geena talked about, scaling. One more story. I have a daughter who has every advantage in the world. She's 16 years old. She goes to a good school system in Olentangy. She wants to be a nurse, and she says, I don't know where to begin. So I went, oh, I'll call my friend Karen Morrison at Ohio Health. She'll know what to do. And I talked to Karen, and she said, what school district? Olentangy. They have a program. We have a program at Olentangy with Ohio Health. My daughter didn't even know about the program. She even asked her counselor, and the counselor said, go to the Career Center. She didn't even have to go to the Career Center. So again, back to alignment, there are things in place that aren't even being used, and this is in a really good school system with really good people and active parents, and yet the alignment's not there in one school system. Geena.
We're seeing this all the time out there. So at Worthington Enterprises, we actually have what we call a Career Accelerator program, and it is geared towards bringing high school seniors into the workforce in manufacturing positions. And we're on our 7th year of it. It's great, but not everybody out there knows about it. And it's been difficult to share it out to school districts as well. And it's this incredible program that's life-changing for some of these students because they earn a certified manufacturing associate credential before they're even getting their high school diploma. And then the best part is they transition into full-time job opportunities with us at Worthington. But we're still struggling to get students into this program, and it is because of the lack of awareness. I mean, our team in recruiting is out there at the school districts, but we also need to tap into those counselors and those teachers that are spending every single day with them. And I think we're doing a good job of that at some districts. For example, we've actually, I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but we've hosted teacher externships, and that I think came out of Olentangy as well. And we brought in 25 counselors and teachers from the district to tour our manufacturing facility, meet with our team, get a better understanding of the jobs that we're hiring for, so then they can understand what these credentials that students can be earning or these programs are and what companies they can roll off into. And that has been crucial for us because now we have a recruiting team, I call them, our teachers and counselors, that are hand selecting students that they meet freshman or sophomore year and sending them to us. But again, it's only in 1 or 2 school districts where we have that. But could you imagine what the possibilities would be if we had that in every district?
So that's where policy comes in and makes a difference. So we're in the middle of a state budget. We can argue about what's good, bad, and indifferent in the budget. But one of the things that we're really pushing for is how do we do more career-connected learning earlier in a student's pathway. So we're talking about how do we begin to talk with kids as early as middle school. Some districts are doing it as early as, elementary school. And it's not about asking a child to pick a job or pick a career and stick with it. I mean, if my son did that, he'd be Batman right now. So, I mean, clearly that is not what we're asking for. But what we do want is for teachers and students to know about the opportunities in their communities, to know about what is the education that it takes to get these jobs. What are your skills and aptitudes? We often look at kids in sort of a deficit model, but even the squirreliest kid in the class has got skills and has talents that we need to be tapping into. And how do you begin to much earlier start talking with kids about what they want to do? How do they prepare? And I know many of you are probably thinking to yourself, we're asking the schools to do everything. Well, the schools don't have to do all of this by themselves. I mean, we've got the Girl Scouts here. We've got communities and schools here. We probably have other, the Columbus Foundation is sitting back there. Many of your companies are giving back. We've got to figure out how to create these partnerships because that's how we're going to get to scale. We can't expect every single school teacher, every counselor, we need them to have a better understanding, but we also need to bring the community partners in and let them do some of the things that they're best at doing. And, that's how we're going to get to scale. But policy does matter, and ensuring that the requirements that we're talking about are for all kids across the state, not just for kids who happen to be lucky enough to live in a district like Olentangy.
And I have a follow-up to that. One of my questions, which you did a great job of already answering, is how early we need to be doing this, and it sounds like earlier. But I'm wondering, is the after high school goal exclusively a college degree? Because when I was in high school, it was you're going to college. It wasn't really an option any other way. And I'm wondering, things are changing so rapidly with technology, but just preparing students look a little different than just funneling them into a college.
Absolutely. What we know is that kids need something beyond a high school diploma. They can do that while they're still in high school. They can do that at the Career Tech Centers. Career Tech Centers do a great job, but it's only about 18% of the kids across the state. So what are we doing for the other 82% of students that are in our traditional high schools and middle schools? We've got to start talking with them much earlier. How do you go into the world of work immediately? Do you go to a 2-year? Can you earn an industry credential? It doesn't have to be just a 4-year degree. I think the pendulum swung too far in that direction. We do know the more education that you have, generally the more money that you earn. So I'm not suggesting that all of these pathways are going to lead to the same place. But college doesn't have to be the only answer, but something beyond high school has to be the answer.
Okay. And as we look to the future, as I said, things are changing rapidly, and one of the main ways that is happening is with AI. And I know just recently, Ohio State announced a big initiative for undergrads, which you can read about in today's Axios newsletter. Got to do a shameless plug. But I'm wondering, does AI need to start earlier? Is college too late to be teaching students about what this can do? And are we trying to prepare students for jobs that may be really changing or not exist yet?
So I'll speak from the education side. The first reaction from many educators was, we need to ban AI. That is the wrong answer. These kids are going to be living in a world with AI. They need to learn how to use it. They need to know how to use it ethically. They need to know what it can do and what it can't do. I mean, if you do 2 searches on 2 different AI platforms, you're often going to get 2 different answers. So how do they use critical thinking to look at these answers? I think we have to be careful about it, and it has to be developmentally appropriate. What I would do with a first grader is far different than what I would do with a high school student. But we heard from industry, absolutely we have to start doing more of this. And these two can talk more about how that's significantly changing the world of work.
For us at Worthington, we are absolutely empowering all of our workforce to start utilizing AI in spaces that they can, but again, in a responsible way. So if we can give students the opportunity to get some exposure to this early on instead of banning it, I mean, the places that they're going to work are already utilizing it. So if we can give them a head start, why wouldn't we?
Yeah, as the oldest person up here, I will.
Just a few months.
I will say that history is fraught with people who ignore advancement in technology, and as a journalism major, watching what happened to journalism, and Axios is a perfect example, as a group of founders who took advantage, quite frankly, of where the market was going. And when I say market, not in a really good way, because you have, young folks like my kids who get their news on TikTok, right? I mean, think about that. And as a policymaker, it became so challenging to get in a room like this if there was a age gap from 16 to 80 to even agree on facts, because the 80-year-old and the 60-year-old and the 50-year-old were getting their facts from traditional, I'll call traditional media, and the 30 and 25 and 18-year-old were getting it on social media. So couldn't even agree on the facts. And so part of that is, I would say, from my perspective, is that the traditional media ignored where technology was going and where the marketplace was going, younger folks, and were relying on people like my mom and dad who were still stuck on the traditional media, and that was a dying base, quite frankly. So same thing with AI, whether it's the business community, whether it's the education community, can't put our heads in the sand, got to figure out a way to make sure it's used for the right purpose, not the wrong purpose, and make sure there are safeguards in place. Policymakers have a tough job in doing that. It should be done nationally. But at the end of the day, we have to try to figure out how to use AI for the better. It will eliminate some jobs. It'll create other jobs. But listen, I was on the website today for Ohio Means Jobs, which is a statewide website, and just took a known employer in the Cleveland area, a known employer in Central Ohio, a known employer in Southwestern Ohio that are members. And today, the Cleveland Clinic has over 3,000 job openings. Think about that. 3,000 jobs openings. If you look at Northwest Ohio and the number of unemployed folks, still a lot. Not all those jobs require bachelor's degrees. A lot of them do. GE Aerospace, now headquarters in Cincinnati. They have plants east of Cincinnati, north of Cincinnati, in the Dayton area. 7,700 job openings. 7,700 job openings. Honda has 1,000 job openings. Despite, and Geena knows this, despite, like Worthington Enterprise, the incredible work they do in local schools, they still have 1,000 job openings. It's, again, the alignment is crazy. And so even with AI, you're still going to have plenty of jobs that aren't being filled. And you know what? In Ohio, if companies like Honda and, well, Worthington Enterprises is in this boat, Worthington Steel is in this boat, GE Aerospace is in this boat, they have other plants outside of Ohio. And if you can't fill a job here, you're going to have to look at filling it elsewhere. And we're not a state that can afford those job postings leave. Because you know what? When I was a kid, growing up, Worthington Industries, gold-plated job. You want to work at Worthington Industries because they have the golden rule at Worthington Enterprise and Worthington Steel. Great employer.
Well, I'm going to try and shift to a couple policy questions before we wrap things up. One that I'd like all of you to weigh in on if we've got time is in Ohio's major higher education overhaul, Senate Bill 1, is going to be taking effect later this month. And I'm wondering if it's on your radar and if you think it will impact the talent and workforce pipeline for Ohio.
Yeah, it probably will. Unfortunately, I've got to kind of work through that. Listen, you guys are going to laugh. I was a Democrat freshman at Ohio State, and I was in the marching band, and I had no interest in politics, but I was a Democrat. I was literally a registered Democrat, didn't miss an election, even when I was at Ohio State. Every single professor I had, minus one, was a liberal Democrat. Guess what happened to me as a college student?
I think we know.
Yeah. I mean, it will have an impact, I think, in terms of talent. I think it's the wrong way to make policy. I'm no longer a policymaker, but I think these things work out ultimately. The policy came in because frustrated moms and dads. I get that, but at the same time, you have the freedom to choose where you want to go to school, and we should be focusing on the very first question that you asked. As policymakers, as the business community, how do we align kids with opportunity so they can succeed in life? That is the key. It doesn't require a college degree, as Lisa said. It requires that we continue to have a pipeline of good jobs, which I worry about because of the lack of alignment and the lack of filling those jobs. I mean, I look here, I saw the mayor of New Albany. He should be up here talking because what New Albany has done in creating an environment to attract a slew of amazing employers who not only pay well, but treat their employees well and treat the city well, is a recipe that if I were a mayor of a city, I'd go sit down with Mayor Spalding and say, what can we do that you're doing because you've got some secret sauce here and the announcements keep coming. Those announcements will stop coming if we can't figure out how to keep a pipeline of workers to those facilities like Amgen just announced another 500 jobs. That's what we should be focusing on as policymakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did either of you want to weigh in?
No.
That's fair.
No, I will say that, you know, I sent all four of my kids to college. What I wanted my kids to experience in college was different perspectives, different ideas, learning to become critical thinkers and problem solvers. I don't think any of us send our kids to college or school to be indoctrinated to the left or to the right. And so, you know, there are a lot of cultural things that are happening in our state and in our world right now, and I think we have to be really careful about what we're doing in that space. You know, education is to educate, and we need to make sure that we can still do that in a safe way, that people can pursue the things that they want to pursue. So I think that's all I'll say about it.
Okay.
I won't give it a thumbs up or thumbs down.
No worries. And Geena, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think at Worthington, we're focusing on what we can control regardless of outcomes and policy, and that's on our talent strategy. So making sure that we're still going out there doing our best to recruit and develop the top talent regardless of what we can't control.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's CMC's longstanding tradition to take some audience questions, so we'll be moving to questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a few minutes. So if you have a question, please make your way over to the microphone now, which is in the back. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please type your questions into the chat box. Before we take the audience questions, I just have one more question for you all, and it's a little less controversial, I guess, which is what's one thing quickly that gives you hope about the future for Ohio's students?
The kids themselves. I think we have a very negative and defeatist attitude about our kids, and I think that they're absolutely amazing, and we need to nurture and tap into their talents.
I absolutely agree with that. Going out into the school districts and meeting students K through 12, they have so much drive and so many ideas, and I'm excited to get them into the workforce. They're going to bring, you know, some new ideas with them, and it's exciting.
I'll agree with that, but I'll also say employers like Worthington Enterprise, right? Geena and Geena's boss and the CEO of Worthington Enterprise, I was telling Sonia, we had a conversation with a group of CEOs, including the Worthington Enterprise CEO last week around the Memorial Tournament, and it was about economic development and workforce. And he and the others there were all committed to, we need to go find them. We need to help them. And that is awesome, because there's no newspaper article about the commitment that these folks are making to our region and our state. There's no TV story. They're just doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Just to piggyback on that, I think, you know, for a long time, the business community would stand on the sidelines and sort of criticize the product that's coming out of the school districts. I think we have seen a significant shift over the last few years where the business community and employers are saying, we need to be a part of this solution, and there's a role for us to play in this, and many, many more of our companies are stepping up and doing that. We need more companies to do that, but we also need the education community to open their doors and allow the business community to come in and work with them.
Well, thank you all for those wonderful responses. And now Doug Buchanan with CMC is going to be curating questions from the live stream audience. And for those of you who are here with us in person, you can join him over at the microphone. So what's our first question, Doug?
Alissa, thank you very much, and thank you to today's panelists for a great conversation. As Alissa mentioned, if you do have a question, please join me here at the microphone. If you're watching online, please type your question into the chat. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. Great questions at CMC can always be asked in just a couple of sentences, and there is a particular punctuation mark that a question always ends with, or should. What punctuation mark is that? A question mark. Thank you to our repeat guests. Yes. I'm going to launch this off with this one. This builds on a comment, Geena, that you made. Prior to the pandemic, there was a proposal by former Governor Kasich to require teachers to shadow businesses in order to renew their teaching licenses. Did that proposal ever see the light of day? And if not, should it now?
Great question. To be completely honest, I would say that, yes, we are seeing that coming out from the school districts. I know I mentioned Olentangy was somebody we partnered with. We've also been seeing it in Delaware. So I think it's a great initiative, and it's getting the teachers out into the workforce to get a better understanding of what's happening out there.
Let me piggyback on that, and I want to thank Melissa Cropper for sending that question in. I think the pushback that happened around that policy was the fact that it was tied to licensure. There were I know we worked with the Ohio Federation of Teachers at the time and others that thought it was a great idea to get teachers out into the workplace to understand this. I think the pushback was the licensure side of it. So there are teachers going out all over the state doing many of those things. It is not tied to licensure, however.
Great. Thank you so much for the comments today. I think that the message has really served the purpose here in the room and online. Very curious of each of your advice for those that might be in the room that are inspired by what you're talking about today, what your first steps would be if you're trying as a business owner to make connections with schools or vice versa. Also, if you've got advice for policymakers on what their first steps should be to make this work more scaled across the state of Ohio. Any advice you've got?
From industry, I would say to start reaching out to those advisory boards at the local school districts, and if you're not already involved in your ISPs in your industry.
Industry sector partnerships.
Thank you. Yep. Those are a great place to make those connections and hear about what's going on with different job opportunities and what's happening.
I would also make a plug for reaching out to the Columbus Partnership in One Columbus. They have somebody that many of you may know, Opal Brandt. Opal is waking up every single day. Her job is to think about emerging talent and how do you better connect the business community with the schools and districts. I know the Chamber does things in this realm as well. And so I think there are a lot of places that you can go to get that help and that navigation to make this work.
How many in the room have heard of school advisory boards? That's what I suspected. So it's mandated by law. Every school district has to do it. There are some school districts like Dublin who have an amazing advisory board. It's real. It's community representatives are on it. Business leaders within the community of Dublin are on it. The superintendent listens. The feedback's incredible. There are other school districts around the state and around our region. It's a check the box. They have one. They really don't meet. They really don't do anything. And it's unfortunate. So if you're in a school district and you want to engage, call the school office and find out about it and be part of it.
Yeah, call your school district and ask about their business advisory council. That's what they're called.
Thank you all. How could the crackdown on DEI programs make it harder for Ohio employers to recruit critical workers, especially from underserved communities? If employers are concerned, what action could they take?
Boy, this is probably not going to be very politically correct. I know employers who were doing DEI before it was called DEI. If you want a talented workforce, you are going to find a person, whether they are blue, red, or purple, or if they're one-handed, or if they're just going to do it. And so my argument back is there are successful employers out there who are attracting people from all walks of life, all religious backgrounds. They don't necessarily call it DEI, but the employee knows that they are sensitive to diversity. They're sensitive to the needs of their employment base. They're just not flashing it in lights for someone to come pick at them or do something else. So from what I see, Doug, is, and it's often like this today in society, with technology the way it is, and the spread of information really fast, that if you just put your head down and focus on what the job is, there are people doing it, have been doing it, and the people who are trying to get jobs, who care about these issues, know who that is.
I'll piggyback on being politically unpopular. You know, I think actually what we're trying to do in education is all about that. We have got, we have to stop social promotion. We have to make sure that at very early ages, kids can read, that they can do math, that they're set up for success in education. That is the way that we are actually going to see a much more diverse and inclusive workforce. And I don't mean that just around Black and brown. It's economically disadvantaged. It's kids with special needs. We have got to be honest about how our kids are performing. We've got to have the interventions in place. We cannot just keep passing them along through school because the third grade teacher doesn't want that kid in her class again. So it's like, oh, I'm passing him along to fourth grade. We are doing kids a disservice. We have to make sure that when students leave our high schools, that they actually have the knowledge and skills to be successful, that set them up to be successful in these jobs.
Hi, my name's Chad Gossett. I'm an assistant principal at a Groveport Madison High School. Thank you guys for your comments and your input. I've heard you talk a lot about curriculum and how that could be modified and adjusted in response to feedback from business leaders. And I think, in my experience as an educator, one other piece of that is who's doing the curriculum, who's actually teaching the curriculum. So my question really is, what role do you see businesses can play in the enhancement of teacher development programs, pre-service and post-service? Have you seen business leaders looking to increase funding for these programs or to measure their effectiveness? So I'm just curious what you think about that.
So interestingly, we had my team and I had a call yesterday with the heads of all of the teacher preparation programs in the state. I do think that one of the things that we need to ensure is that when our teachers are leaving our teacher preparation programs, that they have deep content knowledge in the subjects that they teach. You can't teach kids well if you don't know the content that you're teaching. And so that makes a big difference. I think we also need to help educators better understand what's happening in their communities. You know, I mentioned earlier about pushing into classrooms. You know, I'll use an example. I think it was actually Worthington Enterprises that came in with a specific problem that they had in their enterprise, and they went to a classroom, and it was a real world example, and they said to the kids, help us think through this challenge. Those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be doing more of in our classrooms. I think our business community can help identify what some of those challenges are. What are those case studies? Can they be a coach in the classroom? Geena can talk more specifically about how this worked, but it's where that intersection has to happen. I also think that in our classrooms, we're doing too much sort of what I'm doing right now, which is just talking at people. And we've got to get back to hands-on learning, problem solving. I know a lot of people will say, well, we can't do that because we have standardized tests. I would say baloney. If you do great teaching in your classroom, kids are going to pass tests. So I think there are ways that we need to do a lot more for that intersection to happen.
Yeah, and like Lisa said, we partnered with, it was Columbus Downtown High School at their advanced manufacturing pathway to give a work-based learning opportunity to the junior students. And this really came from the teachers reaching out to us and asking, hey, we need work-based learning opportunities. These juniors aren't seeing what a manufacturing environment looks like. And the teacher at that school specifically came from industry, so he is all about getting work-based learning hours, which has been very helpful with getting these students prepared.
Hi, my name is Aaron Minnick. I'm an IT professional with The Ohio State University. And we touched on this topic, but my question is, well, first I'll say that, from my point of view as an interested citizen, it certainly appears that our state lawmakers are far more interested and attentive to issues of sort of social norms in education than they are in educational outcomes right now. I think we saw that in the debate on Senate Bill 1. I think we've also seen that, in terms of the public's ability to influence that debate, a way not to do that is to show up in the public comment period, even in throngs, because that's not an effective way to to advocate for policy. My question is, if we as citizens wish to advocate with our policymakers to advocate for workforce development, for educational outcomes, what are particularly effective, what are the most effective ways for us to do that, to engage our policymakers in those kinds of topics?
I guess I'll take this. So here's the point I would argue back to you. The legislature is a reflection of the people they represent. We live in 2 Ohio's, maybe 3 Ohio's. I have conversations with legislators in districts where the population is shrinking. They don't have job growth. They don't have the challenges that New Albany has. So as you can imagine, the New Albany challenge is they have a lot of growth. They have needs for housing. They have needs for parks. They have needs for a lot of different things. You talk to a legislator who has a county that has been shrinking for 3 decades. They've lost major employers. The kids see opportunity elsewhere, and so they leave after graduating from high school, or they stay and work at Joe's service station. That legislator has a very different view than a person representing a district in Franklin County. And as you look at the state, I started out with this, 3/4 of the counties in our state are literally shrinking. So you have a majority of legislators representing areas that don't have the challenges that you and I might see here in Central Ohio. And so it's hard to communicate with them if you're not in their district and you're not seeing or hearing what they're hearing. It is a huge challenge. It is the system that we have today. I think the way to do it, the way that I find most effective, is try to take a bigger picture rather than a personal situation that they don't see. Meaning, in Ohio, we want to keep all these children who grow up here in Ohio. How do we do that? Why are they leaving? Why do they go to Chicago? Why do they go to Atlanta? Why do they go to Austin? Why do they go to Boston? And what can we learn from them as to the reasons why they are leaving and not staying here? And what can we do as policymakers to encourage those kids that are born and raised here, and quite frankly, those who come to Ohio State, or Denison, or Franklin, or Kenyon, mostly from outside of Ohio? How can we keep them here? Because we're not an immigration state, generally speaking, and the only way that we are going to grow is if we keep the kids here who are born here, and the kids who happen to come here to go to college stay here. And that would be the better message than having an ideological message to a legislature whose voters are telling him something different ideologically, if that's helpful.
Thank you,
That's
panelists.
why we let Pat answer that question.
On my back, so.
Thank you, panelists. We have just 2 minutes left for one final short question and answer.
Hi, thank you. My name's Eliza McLaren. I'm the head of the Wellington School, a pre-K through 12 independent school here in Columbus. We are, as all educators, trying to prepare students to contribute to and compete in, as you said, the future workforce. And we heard a lot today about the skills and knowledge that students need to have in order to be successful in doing that. And I'm curious if you were to offer advice to, let's say, a junior in high school about what skills and knowledge they need to have in order to be a high performer in the workforce going future, what advice you would offer?
To Lisa's point earlier, you don't need a college degree. Have a credential, have some expertise, along with soft skills to be able to communicate, read and write, basic skills, and a credential. If that would be the thing that I could leave with kids. We're doing a study on the workforce board, and I know I'm filibustering, Doug, I'm sorry, with one local high school, Dublin, that has data. And Lisa has been leading the charge to get data from our education institutions, so we know what kids are learning and what they're not learning and where they're going, because without that data, we don't know that, I'm going to give a number, you'll correct me the number, that the Dublin High School class of 2018, most of them went to college, like 99.9%. Half of them didn't finish. So, and that's Dublin. Where are those half? Are they working at Starbucks? Are they working for their parents' business? Are they still in the state?
Living in my basement?
Are they? There's one Dublin parent here. So the point is get a skill. Don't force a kid to go to college. College is good, but if you really aren't going to, you're just going to, because it's the social norm in your high school to go to college, which you're never going to finish, that does you no good, right? So at the end of the day, have a skill, have a credential, have a focus, but have those soft skills that will translate across the spectrum.
I agree with you, Pat, there on the soft skills. I'd also want to call out as well just those employability skills, things that are hard for us to teach. I know at Worthington, we tell folks we can teach them all the technical skills that they need to be successful, but we can't teach them how to show up for work and be on time. So I think looking at some of those as well.
So I know we need to wrap up. One of the things that I would say is when we look at the chronic absenteeism numbers across this state, we have kids that are not showing up to school in droves. And it was bad during the pandemic, but it's not gotten much better. And when kids are not expected to be at school and when teachers are not showing up to school, it's not surprising that we're struggling to get workers showing up to work.
All right, well, everyone, I wish we had more time, but I'm getting the wrap-up signal, so we're going to have to cut it off. So we're going to turn it back over to Sophia for the concluding remarks.
All right. Well, one, I hope everyone found today's conversation incredibly insightful. For those of you who are tuning in online, we'll make sure that we get this PDF posted on our website, the reality check document that was referenced in the conversation. I have a favor, actually, to ask of everyone in this room. A common theme that was mentioned throughout today's conversation was alignment. This is a really big, hairy topic. We just hit the tip of the iceberg on solutions and ideas around how do we connect jobs and workforce and education. So my favor is share this conversation with your neighbor. Help them understand what they can do as a parent, as a small business owner, as a nonprofit leader, as a nonprofit employee on solving this gap. Because if we care about Central Ohio, we have to care about growth, and more importantly, we have to care about jobs in our economy. So if you can do me that one favor, that'd be so wonderful. And in the meantime, I want to spend a little bit of time thanking our sponsors. This wouldn't be possible without them. So to Communities and Schools of Ohio and the Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland, thank you so much. Thank you to our live stream partner, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch, and more importantly, thank you to the Ellis for hosting us for our very special appreciation to our panelists, Geena Gamble, Lisa Gray, Pat Tiberi, and our host, Alissa Widman Neese. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, and there's more. So please make plans to join us next week right here. We're going to be discussing the new Franklin County Health Map featuring a terrific panel of Central Ohio health leaders. Thank you so much for being here and have a great afternoon.